When Cassie Ventura walked into that courtroom, no one expected what came next. The woman who once stood beside one of music's most powerful men was now front and center, exposing a side of Diddy the public never imagined. What unfolded over 4 days wasn't just testimony. It was a chilling unraveling of control, manipulation, and trauma stretching back over a decade. This wasn't about gossip. This was about survival. From the outside, they were the glamorous couple. Lavish vacations, red carpet moments, sold-out shows. But behind those shuttered penthouses and private jets, Cassie claimed she was living in a nightmare. Her 4-day testimony painted a brutal picture, one that accused Diddy of everything from orchestrating bizarre sex rituals to violent physical abuse. The courtroom fell silent more than once as Cassie described in graphic detail the emotional and psychological prison she says she lived in for years. Let's begin with what many call the most disturbing part of her testimony: the freak-offs. Cassie didn't just mention them in passing, she detailed them. According to her, these were elaborate, drug-fueled sex marathons arranged by Diddy himself. And they weren't optional. Cassie claimed he pressured her into attending, even participating in them, using a mix of manipulation, fear, and actual substances to control her. These freak-offs sometimes lasted 4 days straight. Escorts were flown in. Cassie would allegedly be forced to drink and use MDMA, ketamine, or cocaine before engaging in sexual acts with strangers, often recorded by Diddy or his team. But it didn't stop there. Cassie said that by year 4 of their relationship, these events weren't shocking anymore. They were routine. In fact, she described how Diddy made them feel like a job. She claimed she had no control over when they happened, where, or with whom. Sometimes there would be baby oil, lots of it, and silence. No one in the room would talk. No one ever looked her in the eye. Cameras were sometimes present. Other times, she suspected there were hidden ones. She said she lived in constant paranoia. And while those details were enough to send shockwaves through social media the moment transcripts leaked, Cassie wasn't done. The freak-offs were just one part of a system of control she says Diddy designed to keep her in line, physically, emotionally, and financially. The drugs, the cameras, the blackmail, allegedly all tools he used to trap her. Then came the physical abuse. Cassie described one moment that's now become infamous. A 2016 hotel surveillance video, publicly leaked and confirmed, shows Diddy beating her near an elevator. The footage is grainy but unmistakable. You see him grab her, throw her to the ground, kick her, and then drag her down the hallway. Cassie told the court this wasn't a one-time incident. According to her, physical violence became more frequent as she began to resist his control. And she wasn't the only one he allegedly threatened. She recalled that anyone who tried to help her was targeted too. Friends, family members, even assistants. She spoke of moments when Diddy allegedly locked her inside rooms, took away her phone, and told her she was nothing without him. One of the most chilling lines from her testimony, she said he once looked her in the eye and whispered, "No one's coming for you." But it wasn't just brute force. Cassie testified that Diddy had staff monitoring her movements, reporting back to him if she even left a room too long. He allegedly had hidden cameras in their homes. Guns were present. And not just as props. She said he would flash them in front of her during arguments. Loaded. And if you're wondering where her friends or family were in all of this, well, that's where it gets even darker. Cassie said Diddy worked hard to isolate her. She described how he manipulated her relationship with her own mother, sometimes going weeks without allowing her to speak to her family. He'd allegedly buy her gifts, shower her in money, and then, just as quickly, threatened to take it all away if she didn't play her role. But the most shocking revelation was still ahead. Because after years of being under Diddy's thumb, Cassie says she finally decided to leave. That decision, she testified, nearly cost her everything, including her life. What happened next would stun even longtime industry insiders. Cassie's second day on the stand didn't pull any punches. With the courtroom tightly packed and cameras outside flashing nonstop, she took a deep breath and described one of the most traumatic nights of her life. It was 2018. They were no longer together. At least, not publicly. According to Cassie, she had finally found the strength to walk away. But Diddy wasn't done with her. That night, he invited her to dinner. She said she went, hoping to find closure, or at least walk away on neutral terms. Instead, she claimed he followed her back to her home, forced his way inside, and raped her. The room reportedly went silent as Cassie described what happened next. How she cried, told him no, how she begged him to stop. but he didn't. She said he ignored her completely, did what he wanted, then got dressed and left without saying a word. Just like that. There were no cameras, no witnesses, no recordings, just her word and the weight of years of silence finally breaking. But even before this night, Cassie says she was already deeply trapped in a web of threats and manipulation. Her testimony revealed that Diddy would often remind her of the videos he had, footage of her during those freak-offs, moments she was too intoxicated to remember or too broken to resist. He allegedly used those clips as leverage, warning her that if she ever spoke out, they'd find their way to the internet. According to Cassie, it was a form of blackmail that kept her frozen for years. And she wasn't the only target. Cassie claimed that Diddy didn't just threaten her, he went after anyone who got too close. That included one particularly shocking incident involving rapper Kid Cudi. According to her testimony, Diddy discovered she had a brief romantic connection with Cudi after their breakup. His reaction? Terrifying. Cassie said Diddy threatened to blow up Cudi's car. At first, no one believed it. But then, months later, Cudi's actual car exploded in his driveway. And here's where it gets even crazier. Kid Cudi himself later confirmed the story, saying yes, his car really was blown up, and no, it wasn't a coincidence. This revelation alone sent the internet into a tailspin. Could Diddy have actually ordered an attack like that? And if so, what else had he done in the shadows? Cassie also told the court that she feared for her own family. Her mother, who took the stand later in the week, backed up her claims. Emails, messages, late-night calls, it all painted a picture of fear, isolation, and psychological warfare. According to her mom, Cassie wasn't just scared, she was paranoid. She'd check locks repeatedly, scan rooms for hidden cameras, and obsessively change her phone passwords. Every shadow looked like a threat. Every ring of the doorbell could have been someone sent to intimidate her. At one point, Cassie said Diddy even forced her to record voice messages that he could use later. In one of them, she allegedly threatened another man on his behalf, using language that was clearly not her own. During the trial, the defense played a clip of that very audio. Her voice trembled as she threatened someone, repeating phrases that sounded rehearsed. Diddy's legal team used this to paint her as unstable, manipulative, even violent. But Cassie insisted it was all done under duress, that he had made her say those words, record them, and send them out like weapons. And yet, even with these horrifying claims, Diddy's team tried to spin the narrative. They presented text messages, emails, and posts that showed Cassie being affectionate, flirtatious, even initiating contact after some of the alleged incidents. Their angle? That she wasn't a victim, she was complicit. But Cassie pushed back hard. She told the court that trauma doesn't look like a straight line, that sometimes victims reach out to their abusers, that fear, love, and control can become tangled in ways most people can't understand unless they've lived it. Her voice cracked, but she didn't break. And as her testimony wrapped that day, even some of the harshest critics online began to reconsider. This wasn't about a breakup gone bad. This was about power, twisted, violent, and absolute. But just when it felt like the worst had been said, Cassie's third day on the stand pulled back the curtain even further. Surveillance, paranoia, and what she claimed was a full-blown system of control that would make any Hollywood thriller seem tame. By the time Cassie entered the courtroom for her third day of testimony, it was clear. This wasn't just about personal trauma. This was about a machine, a system of control so deep, so calculated, that it left the room frozen in silence. What she described next didn't sound like a relationship. It sounded like captivity. Cassie testified that Diddy operated like he was running a private intelligence agency. According to her, his homes were filled with hidden cameras. Not just in public areas, but in bedrooms, hallways, even bathrooms. She said she was constantly being watched, not just by Diddy, but by the staff he hired. People paid to report back to him on where she went, what she did, who she spoke to. In one chilling moment, she recalled leaving the room for just a few minutes, only to return and find Diddy waiting, already furious, claiming he knew exactly where she had gone. That paranoia never left her. She said it felt like living in a cage with invisible walls. She couldn't trust anyone, not even herself. Diddy would allegedly test her loyalty constantly, sometimes using fake scenarios to see how she'd react. And if she failed, there were consequences. Emotional outbursts, silent treatments, and sometimes violence. According to Cassie, guns were not just part of the background, they were front and center. She described multiple incidents where Diddy would pull out a loaded weapon during arguments, not to shoot, but to intimidate, to remind her who had the power. She recalled one time he laid the gun on the table between them during dinner. Another time, he reportedly waved it around while shouting, forcing staff to leave the room. He never fired, but she says the message was loud and clear. I could. And it wasn't just about fear, it was about isolation. Cassie told the court that over the years, Diddy cut her off from almost everyone who mattered. She said he'd tell her things like, "Your mom doesn't care about you," or "Your friends are jealous of you." It didn't happen all at once. It was slow, strategic. By the time she realized how alone she was, she felt like it was already too late. She described how Diddy used gifts as both bait and punishment. One day, a designer bag. The next, complete silence. He'd take her on a yacht to St. Bart's, then scream at her for hours the moment they were alone. She said he knew exactly when to play the charmer and when to become the enforcer. According to Cassie, this constant push-pull was part of his power. It kept her guessing, kept her afraid. Then came the blackmail. Cassie testified that after the first few freak-off recordings, Diddy began hinting that he had copies. At first, she thought it was a scare tactic, but over time, she says he became more specific. She claimed he would describe scenes, things she barely remembered because she was under the influence, then remind her that the right lawyer or the right magazine would love to get their hands on it. According to her, he'd often say things like, "You wouldn't survive it if this got out." This looming threat became part of her daily life. She says it affected everything: her sleep, her diet, even her memory. In fact, she told the court she began keeping her own notes and recordings just in case she ever got the courage to speak up. But she never felt safe enough to do it. Not until years later. And while Cassie was revealing this entire dark reality, something else was happening in the courtroom. The defense was starting to crack. On the third day, Diddy's legal team became noticeably more aggressive. They began interrupting, objecting more frequently, and cross-examining her statements with visible urgency. Why? Because it was working. Cassie's calm, consistent tone and the detailed timeline were connecting with people, online, in the press, and even, reportedly, with members of the jury. But the defense had one card left to play: the image of Cassie as a willing participant. They pushed hard on the idea that she had accepted money, trips, and gifts in return for her silence. They brought up her past social media posts, messages she'd sent after allegedly traumatic events, and even old interviews where she'd praised Diddy. Cassie didn't flinch. She told the court those were all survival tactics. That when you're trapped, you say what you need to say. That sometimes pretending everything's fine is the only way to avoid getting hurt. And as the third day wrapped, the courtroom buzzed with tension. The question on everyone's mind wasn't whether Cassie was telling the truth, it was, how deep did all of this go? Her final day on the stand would offer the answer, and introduce a twist no one saw coming. By the time Cassie took the stand for the fourth and final day, the courtroom felt different, heavier. The press was now calling it one of the most gripping celebrity testimonies in recent memory. People weren't just watching the headlines, they were hanging on to every word, and Cassie knew it. Her voice was steadier, her posture firmer, like someone who had survived the storm and was finally ready to walk through the wreckage. She opened with a statement that immediately captured attention. "I was afraid of dying, but I was more afraid of staying silent." With that, she launched into her final round of testimony, this time focused not just on the trauma, but on the aftermath. How her life had changed, how her relationships were destroyed, how her sense of identity had to be rebuilt from the ground up. She described living with flashbacks, panic attacks, and insomnia, the sound of certain songs, the smell of cologne, the click of a camera. These things would trigger waves of anxiety she couldn't control. She talked about therapy, isolation, and the years it took to even admit to herself that what happened wasn't her fault. And she wasn't alone. According to Cassie, multiple women in Diddy's circle had reached out to her in private. Some shared similar stories, others just wanted to say, "Thank you." But all of them were afraid to speak up. Then came the bombshell. In the final hour of her testimony, Cassie revealed that she had found copies of messages, texts, voicemails, even emails, where Diddy allegedly coordinated hush money payments to women he had harmed. According to her, these payments weren't coming from him directly, but through intermediaries, shell companies, and sometimes even fake charities. It wasn't just about hiding scandal, It was about silencing victims before they ever had a chance to speak. And just like that, this trial wasn't just about Cassie anymore. It was about a possible system of abuse and cover-up going back years, maybe decades. Of course, Diddy's legal team was ready. They immediately objected to the inclusion of those claims, insisting they were speculative and unverified. The judge allowed some statements, but not all. Still, the damage was done. The jury had heard it, and so had the public. What followed was a tense, bitter cross-examination. Diddy's lawyers tried everything to shake her. They pointed out inconsistencies in her timeline. They questioned why she had stayed so long, why she hadn't gone to the police sooner, why, if she feared for her life, she'd ever agreed to see him again after the breakup. But Cassie didn't back down. Her response was simple: because I didn't think anyone would believe me. Until now. As she stepped down from the stand, a few people in the courtroom stood up, quietly, respectfully, a gesture of solidarity. No applause, just silence. Outside the courthouse, media outlets were in a frenzy. Clips of her testimony flooded social media. Hashtags like Stand with Cassie and Diddy trial exploded overnight. Even celebrities began to speak out, some cautiously, others forcefully. For the first time, there was real public pressure on Diddy, not just from fans, but from brands, collaborators, and business partners. But what happens next? That's the question no one can answer. Yet, legal experts are already predicting this trial could set off a chain reaction. If Cassie's allegations about hush money and systemic cover-ups hold up, this might not be the only case. There could be more victims, more lawsuits, even criminal charges. Federal agencies are reportedly watching the case closely, especially given the sex trafficking and racketeering angles. And Diddy? His team continues to deny all allegations. They claim the relationship was consensual, complicated, yes, but not abusive. They say Cassie is misrepresenting the past for financial and emotional reasons. So far, Diddy has not taken the stand, and no one knows if he ever will. As of now, the jury is still out, literally. Deliberations are expected to begin within days, and the world is watching. But here's what's undeniable. Whether or not a guilty verdict ever comes down, Cassie's voice changed everything. She broke the silence that had hung over this story for years. She put details on record. She risked everything to be heard. And that leaves us with one final question, one the court can't answer, but the public might have to. What if the most powerful people in entertainment have been hiding behind fame, money, and fear for decades? And what happens when someone finally pulls the curtain back? Because if Cassie's story is just the beginning, Hollywood might not be ready for what comes next. If this story shocked you as much as it shocked us, don't just scroll away. Hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dive content, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think justice will be served, or is this just the tip of the iceberg? We want to hear what you think. And trust us, what's coming next in this case could change everything, so turn on notifications, because this story is far from over.